Okay, so this is just a quick demo on how to use Microsoft Excel to generate effective scatter plots. And of course also whether you're doing the scatter plots by hand or whether you're doing them on Microsoft Excel, some of the components that you need in order to make it a successful figure or a successful diagram and to have all the necessary information and so on. So first of all, this is our first section in our unit on two variable stats. Two variable stats means that we have two variables, two measurements, two things that vary with one another, creating not single values, like single variable data, but creating two measurements that correlate with each other. You know, someone's height and someone's, I don't know, foot size or something like that. In this case, I'm going to take the class database. This is the class database that I collected a long time ago. I can post it online if you want me to, but it doesn't really, make much sense for you to have that because you're going to be generating your own two variable stats, whatever it may be. Even if you're doing your CPT, it could be day, of course. And then the actual stock price to see the fluctuation in the stock price and then looking for relationships therein. We're going to do a lot more with this, but this is just the basics. So I'm going to look at the relationship between hand span and arm span and hand span. Arm span being the X, or what we call the independent variable, okay, or the explanatory variable, the value that explains the value of the dependent variable or the response variable. So the arm span is the explanatory variable or the X, and hand span is the Y. Whatever you want to be X, make sure that you highlight that first. I'm going to go down to 21, so I have 20 values. And then remember, you either press Control or Command, depending on the type of device you have, and then you highlight the second one. The second one that you highlight is going to be the Y. So X first, Y second. Okay. Then you go ahead and you do a scatter plot. Okay, now how do you do a scatter plot? Very easy. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take it from this database and I'm going to paste it somewhere else and then I'm going to redo it. Okay, so I just want this data and I'll take however much I want. I'll just copy that and then I'll go to a nice fresh sheet and I will paste that. Okay, so here it is. I'll post this spreadsheet as well so that you can, I don't know, see what I did, but I didn't do much. Okay, but have a look around and see what's what. Okay, so again, like I said, this is going to be my X variable, so I highlight this. And then Command or Control. Control if you have an IBM, Command if you have, or a PC, Command if you have a Mac. And then hold that down for the second one. So again, you select this one with your left click. Then you hold down Command, then you select this one. So X first, Y second. Now, because these guys are side by side, I can just highlight both like that. Okay, but if you want to select them separately from a large database of different types of measurements, go ahead and do that. Okay, now from here, I've selected my data. In fact, I'm just going to select the data itself rather than arm span and hand span labels. And I'm going to go to the same thing that we did for the bar graphs, okay, and histograms. Insert, okay, but instead of going to bar graph, of course, if we did bar graph, we'd see that it has two sets of data. The little red there is the hand span. And then the blue is so that's how we would do a two variable analysis on a single variable graph. But instead we go to Insert and we go to this guy, which looks like a scatter plot right here. And there are all kinds of options that exist for this. We don't want to connect any dots. We're going to do all kinds of that stuff ourselves. So we just want a basic normal scatter plot, nothing crazy, okay? And then go from there. I'm going to make this graph a little bit bigger so you can see the components of it to make it successful because that's the focal point for this. Yeah, it's a little bit about computer strokes and what to do on the software. But otherwise, really, most of you could figure this out, how to do this yourself, I think, if you played around a bit. What you'll notice is my data set is kind of stuck to the top right region of this graph. So what I will do is I've taken these examples or these variables as an example of how to modify the axes. This would be analogous to, if you're doing it by pencil, putting a little break in the axes here. So you can spread out the data and see the pattern a little bit better, okay? This, of course, if you draw a line of best fit on a hand-drawn scatter plot, will be inaccurate if you extend it to the y-intercept, but the slope will still be accurate as long as you pay close attention to the scales that are on the vertical and horizontal axes. Okay, now, of course, we need to have proper labels in here. So we'll start with that. So again, we have options. One is to add your chart element as we've done before. Okay, we can add things individually if we want to, or you can do a quick layout and see any of these guys, whichever one it is that you like, and click on it and see what it looks like. Okay, and maybe I'll click on this one here. It's got a nice grid on here, so we can do some interpolation and extrapolation. It's got a vertical axis label, horizontal axis label, so that's good. Okay, let me make this a little bigger. Well, maybe I don't want to make it that much bigger. Anyway, So again, it's got a vertical axis label and a horizontal axis label. I don't really want this series, but if you're going to graph multiple relationships together, then you can do that. Okay, what I do want to have is do want to have an actual a title over top there. So I'm going to go to my add chart element, and I can customize this however I want to. I'm going to go to chart title, and I'm probably going to have that above the chart, but it's up to you. It does change the size of the scale and whatnot. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and make sure that we have nice labels for our axes. Obviously, the graduations on our axes are done by the computer, but of course, if you're doing it by hand, you have to pick effective values that way, so you can have a scale on your vertical and horizontal axes. In this case, remember that you can see the values go from 0 to 250, or my x variable, which is arm span. So I would say arm span. And then units, don't forget units. You're going to need to have units. We have to give these things magnitude, okay, so we can understand what they're in. And then for my vertical axes, same deal, except of course that's going to be my hand span. So this would be data where we were, I don't know, maybe designing gloves and we had, I don't know, data on arm spans. Okay, then we could actually say to ourselves, all right, well, what would a hand span be appropriate based on the information we have? We take the arm span data and use it to explain what the value of the hand span is. And we're actually going to generate an equation, a y equals mx plus b equation, where it will be y, this value equals mx, this value plus b, b being the y-intercept and m being the slope. Okay, so we will be doing that later. In this title, we want to make sure that we have key components to it. A very descriptive title is key. So you want to have, for example, the relationship or graph showing the relationship between, and don't just make it x versus y, right? Relationship between the arm span and the hand span for a group of data management students taken from Mr. H's data class fall, I don't know, I think we said 2012. I can't remember what it was before. Okay, I spelled a couple things wrong, but you guys understand. You can edit these things and fix them all and so on and make it look beautiful. Again, I forgot my A in data and so on. All right, so there you go. You have yourself a nice descriptive title. Okay, and that's key. A lot of you guys left that out in some of your assignments. Make sure that you have it in there. You don't want to lose marks for something so silly as that. Okay, I'm a science teacher as well as a data teacher. I learned my data management in the context of biology, taking biometrics, strangely enough, with Mr. Curry. We were in the same class. But anyway, for those of you guys who know him. Either way, so here we are. Everything looks good, except for we've got this, I don't know, a little smattering of data in the top right-hand corner, which means the rest of this graph is pretty much useless to look for relationships, accurate relationships like slopes and things like that. So what I want to do is I want to modify the axis. I want to put a break in the axis. Now in Microsoft Excel, you can't put a break like you would do with the two little slashy lines where you would go 0, put some slashy lines, and then maybe start this at 150. We can't do that in Microsoft Excel, but what we can do is format the axis. So what you do is anything that's on a graph, if you click on it, in this case I've clicked on the bottom axis or horizontal axis here, and then if you click on it and right click on it, okay, then it gives you a drop-down menu of different things that you can do. Sorry, deselected it there. Click on it, right-click. Okay, and one thing you can do is you're looking around saying, oh, what can I do? I can do this, I can do this. Format your axes. Okay, and formatting your axis allows you to do a bunch of different things. You can make it look different and so on. But what I'm interested in is the minimum and the maximum. You can also modify the units and make the graduations a little bit larger, a little bit smaller. In this case, what you'll notice is from 0 to 150 is almost entirely useless, although we do have one datum right there that is a little bit less than 150. So I'm going to maybe say, okay, instead of starting at 0, I want to start at 130. Okay, and what that immediately does, you press enter. Okay, you can do other things with it too, is it spreads the data out. Hopefully you notice what happened there almost instantaneously when we did that. The data spread out now over a larger span. And of course you can go to 140 or whatever it is that you want to go to. If your maximum value or minimum value, you can make differences. Now the key here is, because I've modified this axis, if I draw a line of best fit and it hits this y-axis, that's not going to be a y-intercept. It's not going to be accurate because there's a lot more of the graph that's missing to allow that line to translate slope up or slope down and hit the y-axis at a different location. But it is certainly more attractive. We're going to do the same thing with the vertical axis as a review. So we click on the axes, we right click or control click for those of you guys who have Macs. And you go to format your axes, and then again, you want to make the lowest part of your axis what the lowest value is. The lowest value looks like, something a little bit above 15. So if I change that to 15, it's really going to stretch this data out, and it's going to make it look like a graph that's nicely filled out, and we can see the relationship a little bit more accurately with a bit more certainty when we're trying to figure out a line of best fit and whatnot. Although we will be doing other calculations associated with that through this unit. Okay, so this is generating an effective two-variable graph. Again, key components, breaks in the axis to maximize the effectiveness of the graph as a visual representation. First of all, scales on your axes have to be appropriate. They have to be equal unless it's a logarithmic axis, and those would be in specific applications. But for now, we're going to keep it fairly linear axes just to look at relationships that exist there. But in university, you may do some log transformed data. Labels on the axes along with, of course, units for those labels and a nice descriptive title. So these are all key features in generating an effective scatter plot. Okay? And you can modify things as you go from there, but largely that is what it is. Hopefully that helps, and we will be extending from this point. So I will take this file and I will save it and put it along with the video so you can have a peek at it if you need to otherwise. Have a good one.